Welcome to Fundamentals of the Faith, and I'm really excited to bring this topic to you because it really is something that's neglected many times. We make lots of assumptions about what people know, where they are in their spiritual walk, whether they're even saved or not. And it's important that everyone goes through some kind of fundamentals of the faith, and that's our goal tonight. To first show you and outline you what is the essentials of the gospel and what should we know as a believer, but also give you some tools and helps to use Logos to get the information, not only for your own edification, but to help someone else. Let's take a look at the outline for tonight. Right now we're doing the introduction and opening. We're going to take a look at some recommended but not required resources, and these resources are going to be organized into the unbeliever gospel resource category. Then we'll look at believer resources for growing in the faith. We'll look at introductions to doctrine, introductions to spiritual disciplines, Bible companions, apologetic resources, historical resources, some faith summaries like catechisms, key collections to create in Logos. And then we're going to have a little discussion on, are they truly saved? Warnings, we'll show you how to distinguish between a setback in the faith versus rejection of the faith. We'll determine someone's spiritual condition as best we can. We'll look at some essential doctrinal foundations. For example, what's the essentials of any gospel message? And there's 10 key areas we'll look at. We'll talk about sanctification. What is the path of growth and how do we begin that process of growing? We'll look at the new believer starter library. What does a new believer need as far as resources? And then we'll talk real briefly about the next steps for a new Christian. Now, with every webinar, we include a personal book. And let me go ahead and open that so you can see that. So here's the personal book that's going to be included with the purchase of this webinar. As you can see, we've got all 7 sections. And as I mentioned before, for those of you who regularly attend the webinars, you know that these books are very, very helpful because we have, for example, all the links to the books that I mentioned, and even some of the books I don't mention. And there are links to go to the Logos store, as well as links if you own the book, you can open immediately by clicking on it. Very handy. Additionally, we have the rules of the collection. So instead of you having to type it out, you just can select that, copy and paste, and you're in business. So that's really helpful. And then all my notes are here with all the key cross-references. So you just float your mouse, the scriptures are there. In situations where I'm doing searches, I have the search link there, but I give you extra information so that you can construct the search yourself. And because it is integrated into the Logos program as a personal book, you can be watching the video and using the personal book while you study. Let me go ahead and expand this so you can see how detailed this particular personal book is for tonight's webinar. So you can see there's a lot of information to cover tonight. And just a couple quick announcements. The webinar should be available in 72 hours. Being a holiday weekend, I'll try to get it done before the weekend is over. And it normally retails for $9.99, but we're going to give you a 50% off discount for $4.99. And then over at the right, you can see we still are selling the Logos 4 training. So if you haven't upgraded Logos 5, fret not. You have training available, over 300 videos, about 17 hours, covering everything you need to know about Logos and more. The Logos 5 videos are now out and available. The orange disc covers all the features of Logos 5. The blue disc has over 282 book overviews organized in 14 Bible study categories to help you know about the books in your library and guide you in your book buying purchases. And the green disc helps you apply this for the purpose of studying the Bible and preparing a message. And so that's going to take you through Matthew 13. Again, it is the most comprehensive and affordable training and detailed training on the internet. And you can get that at LearnLogos.com /buy now. And let me just stress that whether you're a beginner or an advanced user, you will be surprised at how much you'll learn and how easy it is to follow along. The next webinar is going to be in a couple weeks. It's going to be Tuesday, September 10th, and we're picking up with part 2, and it's End Times Part 2 of 4, Rapture Views. We're going to jump in the middle of this controversy, and the question is, who's right? Now, we may not be able to totally determine that, but you're going to be equipped not only to study this topic for yourself, but we're going to look at the views and see why there is so much disagreement, and ultimately determine where at the end of this, the argumentation, where do the arguments hang on? Where are the strongest points? Where are the weakest points? What are the best resources? And just be able to talk about the future of what God's revealed in the scriptures is exciting. And no doubt this is going to be a fun topic. Looking forward to it very much. And so that'll be Tuesday, September 10th. All right, we are ready to begin. So let's go ahead and start off with the resources. Now, I'm not going to cover every resource in the personal book, but I'm going to highlight a few of them. One thing to note, this webinar is very unique in that it really is a summary of many other webinars. And so what I've done to make it convenient for you is I've listed all those related webinars here with direct links to the page. So if you see a topic here that you want to explore further, good news, we have the webinar. We've gone into more extensive training. So take advantage of those links. Now, the recommended but not required resources, I titled that because I don't want to set you in a position where you feel like you have to buy every book that we mention here or Logos mentions, but it is important to buy strategically. And I've always said one good book is worth 100 mediocre books, or maybe more moderately, maybe 10 reasonable books or 10 mediocre books. So let's start off with some unbeliever gospel resources. Let's go to the next step, and here's some great questions to ask someone who's a new believer. This is just some of the things this is all based on Bible passages. I should have included those, but I wasn't able to at the moment. But here are 6 key areas to explore when someone claims to be a new Christian. And also as you're walking them through the fundamentals of the faith. What is their pattern of prayer? I firmly believe that every new believer is just going to automatically pray. They may not know how to pray, but they're going to be talking to God right away. Second is they're going to have some kind of Bible reading habits. They're going to want to be in the Bible. I mean, that's one of the marks of a believer. They love God's word. Thirdly, how regularly do they attend and serve a Bible preaching church? A new believer is going to want to get next to God, going to want to worship with other believers, and is going to want to help out in the church. Fourthly, are they fellowshipping with Christians? I mean, there's just going to be a natural desire to be with believers rather than unbelievers who are putting down their Lord or are unbelievers who are involved in sin. And then there's going to be a desire to witness and evangelize. They're going to want to tell others about what's happened in their life, what Christ has done. And then lastly, they're going to want to deal with sin. They're going to begin for the first time to have a conscience towards their sin. They're going to want to turn from sin. Now, in an ideal world, a person gets saved and right away you can start discipling them. But in many cases, people get saved, they don't get hooked up with a church, and they meander for a while. And so bad habits can get put in place, and it makes it very difficult to discern their spiritual condition in that situation because they've got all these bad habits. So be sensitive, work with the individual, but these are some of the areas I would address right away. These are some of the most important areas to address. And then another question, have they been baptized? When? What type of baptism? Many Christians will say that they've been baptized as a child and so forth, or they were baptized as a Catholic, as a baby, or they were part of the Reformed Church and they got baptized by their parents. Some people get baptized thinking they were saved. Later in life, they find out they weren't saved, and now they're going to get rebaptized, and they think they can just, lean on that previous baptism. Now, I've got a whole webinar on baptism that will discuss, all that. But what's really important and key here is, were they a believer when they got baptized? That's the goal here. And if you go to your home page and type in baptism, you can get some resources very quickly that will give you some insight into baptism. And like I said, I've got links in the personal book on my baptism webinar. All right, we are cruising along. Now, I know there's a lot of lecture here today, and I'm trying to balance using Logos, but also equipping you. And so let's now jump in to the next section. What is the essential doctrinal foundation, the 10 essentials of any gospel presentation? Now, this is for witnessing, but this is also to impart to the new believer and making sure that they have a right understanding of these topics. Now, what I've done is I've asked a question, and I've given you a link to a resource that answers the question. Now, if you don't have the resource, you'd have to get it to use that link, or what you can do is simply run the search. Now, you can see, I'm going to leave this up so you can see some of the text here, and then you can just start typing that, or just get the webinar, and then you can copy and paste. But let me run this search. and make room here. And let me close some of these other resources quickly. Okay. So here we ran this search on what is the Bible, and you can see what's coming back. Some very key topics like bibliology, doctrine of the Bible. And what we want to do is make sure that they understand at the end of the day what the Bible is. And that is, we hold to the belief that it's the Word of God. It's the final authority in faith and practice. It's above man's word and man's wisdom, and it's accurate and can be trusted. It's not a myth. It's not just written by men, but written by God through men. Very important in overview. And so teaching someone what is the Bible and the right view of the Bible is absolutely critical. And so that's a great test. The next topic is, who is God? All right, so when you start to witness, and we're going to be going back and forth between witnessing and sharing to a new believer. So when I enter an evangelistic encounter and I have time to, 15, 20, 30 minutes to have a discussion, I can get into more of these. Now, you may find yourself limited in time and you can't cover all these. That's okay. Just make an appointment, try to see if you can get back with the individual. If you don't think you're going to have enough time or there's not going to be a second opportunity, then you need to go right to the heart, who Jesus is and how to be saved. But I like to talk about the Bible right away, we believe the Bible is the Word of God and that in it we have everything we need for life and godliness and that we can trust it for our very souls and salvation. And so that's what we want to communicate in the Bible. And then you just ask the question, what do you think the Bible is? Now, you can even hold off on your own comment so that you don't lead the individual to repeat or parrot what you've just said. And you say, as a Christian, we need to have the right view of the Bible. So what is your view of the Bible? What are some of the thoughts and ideas you have? And let them discuss that with you. And then you could take notes and see where the areas of correction need to be. And then you can share some of these things from your Logos library to assist them in the right view of the Scriptures. All right, the next one is number 2. Who is God? Now, let me just open up a book here. Here's one from Louis Berkhoff, and it's just the essential nature of God. Now, when I talk about God in a witnessing encounter as well as a new believer encounter, there's certain things I want to make sure they understand. That number 1, God is the only God. That's really important. Second, he is the creator and that he made you and I and all the heavens and earths. That takes care of evolution. That takes care of a whole bunch of other issues. And so I can get a real quick assessment of, well, who do you think God is? And do you believe that he created the universe? Do you believe he created man? And as you pull those questions out of the individual and you see the answers, you'll quickly know exactly where they stand. And so this search that I've got here will help you in getting that information so you can study it, prepare for it, and then you can walk someone through that. Now, the next one is Bible study. Now, this is something to impart to a new believer. You want to get them to start reading the Bible every day. And now you, of course, can, if you've taken my webinars, I've got 2 webinars, how to study any book of the Bible, how to survey any book of the Bible. These are really good things to help someone. But notice that I've got some key passages. I mentioned the Matthew 7:4 about the 2 foundations, but I have the Acts passage. I like to share this with new believers. The brethren immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea. And then when they arrived, they went into the synagogue of Jews, okay? And now, and I love what it says here. Now, these were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica, for they received the word with great eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see whether these things were so. So here's Paul the apostle showing up, and these Bereans are checking Paul's math. They're checking to see what he says against the scriptures to see if they're true. That's the spirit of a new believer and someone who's really concerned about the truth. And so I love that example, and I like to share that with a new believer. And so, but and let's get into the practical side now. And I've got this little application section in several of these. I would create a Bible reading plan for them, especially one where they read the Old Testament, New Testament, Psalm, and Proverbs. The reason I like this way is they don't get bogged down in the Old Testament, especially when you get all those genealogies and numbers. So how do we do that in Logos? Real easy. Go to Documents, go to Reading Plan, and then give it a name, and I would name it after them. So we could say new believer, last name, first name, however you want to do it. John Doe, whatever you want to call them. All right, and then you'll pick a Bible. Now, typically with a new believer, unless you're, a King James only person, I would give them a translation that's easy to understand. And believe it or not, like an NIV, though I'm not a big fan of that for studying, for a new believer, that makes it easier. Or ESV, New American Standard, or New King James. One of those translations that's easy English to understand. Then after you've done that, pick up all passages. And when you click on all passages, you're going to see some divisions here. If you scroll down, you got entire Bible. And if you keep going all the way to the bottom, you're going to have a section called Old and New Testament, Psalms and Proverbs, each session. Very, very important. And then I would shoot for, now it's going to say every day. Don't do it every day, okay? Give them kind of a Monday through Friday. By having 2 days off, you're going to give them time to catch up if they fall behind. Remember, they're new believers. They're not disciplined yet in reading the Bible habitually. So give them a Monday through Friday and then use the weekends to catch up. All right. And then start with, maybe a week from today so they can kind of get started. And then instead of 1 year, I would use 6 to 9 months. Okay. Or roughly, 30 to 40 weeks. Now, the reason I say 6 to 9 months is if they fall behind, they can still finish within the year. And that's really important. You want them in their first year of salvation to get once through the Bible. And then go ahead and generate that report. So I recommend, doing such a Bible reading plan for them. You've got the Logos tool. They probably don't. This would be a great handout for them. So take advantage of that. Let me go back and open up my personal book.